Take a close look at this architecture. Thousands of identical iron bars, layered in endless tiers, designed to hold hundreds of men in absolute uniformity. Shawshank Prison operates on a crushing scale, and its primary function is to strip away every trace of human individuality. When every hour of your life is dictated for you, told exactly when to eat, when to sleep, and when to use the bathroom, you lose the capacity for independent thought. The inmates call this institutionalization. You spend enough decades locked in a cage, and you become entirely dependent on those walls for your sense of self. We see the tragic endpoint of this conditioning in Brooks Haitlin. After 50 years inside, the elderly librarian is paroled into a fast-paced, modern world he no longer recognizes. Terrified and stripped of his status, Brooks finds himself unable to cope with freedom. He takes his own life in a halfway house. Shawshank demands your physical freedom, but its true toll is much darker. It systematically erases the mind. Anyone crossing through its gates enters a high-stakes psychological vacuum, where the greatest threat is forgetting how to be human. Into this meat grinder walks Andy Dufresne. He is a soft-spoken, highly educated vice president of a large Portland bank. But after being wrongfully convicted of murdering his wife and her lover, Andy is stripped of his wealth and handed 2 back-to-back life sentences. He immediately becomes a target. Andy appears physically fragile, looking like a stiff breeze could blow him over. This vulnerability attracts the attention of a brutal gang known as the Sisters, who subject him to relentless, violent attacks over his first 2 years. This establishes a brutal equation. Andy has to figure out a way to survive a deeply hostile, violent ecosystem that he is physically unequipped for, while simultaneously fighting off the psychological rot that claimed Brooks. Andy adapts by weaponizing the one thing the prison cannot confiscate: his financial intellect. While tarring a roof, he overhears the ruthless captain of the guards complaining about taxes. Andy steps in, offering a perfectly legal loophole to shield the money. His price? 3 cold beers apiece for his coworkers. This single transaction triggers a massive escalation. Soon, Andy is preparing tax returns for half the guards in the prison. Within a few years, he is managing the books for Warden Norton, funneling a river of dirty kickbacks from corrupt public works contracts. This flowchart illustrates exactly how Andy protects the operation. He creates a phantom identity named Randall Stevens. Stevens has a birth certificate, a driver's license, and a social security number, but he exists entirely on paper. He acts as the legal filter, absorbing the warden's dirty cash and depositing it cleanly into bank accounts across the state. By engineering this financial architecture, Andy entirely neutralizes the physical threats against him. He trades his economic expertise for absolute protection from the guards and a single solitary cell. Surviving the physical environment is only half the battle. Andy knows he has to actively cultivate a vibrant inner world, or he will lose his mind. He decides to elevate the humanity of the inmates around him. He sets his sights on the prison's meager book collection. For 6 years, Andy writes a letter a week to the state senate demanding funds. When they finally send a tiny check, he doubles his efforts, writing 2 letters a week until they concede entirely. He builds the best prison library in New England, stocking the shelves with educational materials and authors like Alexander Dumas. His rebellion reaches its peak when he locks himself inside the warden's office and broadcasts Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro over the public address system. The stunt earns him 2 brutal weeks in solitary confinement, a punishment he accepts with a smile. To Andy, the music and the books are sustenance. They prove that hope is an impenetrable internal fortress. It is a piece of the human soul that the prison system cannot touch, regulate, or destroy. All of this ties back to a highly specific scientific concept. Geology is the study of pressure and time. It explains how microscopic shifts can carve out entire canyons, provided they operate on a long enough timeline. Andy applies geology to his confinement. For 19 years, he uses a tiny 7-inch rock hammer, a tool his friend Red assumed would take 600 years to tunnel through a wall with. Night after night, Andy is relentlessly chipping away at the thick concrete of his cell. He conceals this massive, decades-long excavation in plain sight. He simply asks for a large, beautiful pin-up poster of Rita Hayworth, using the beautiful facade to cover the ever-expanding hole in his wall. Andy bypasses the need for a violent, sudden rebellion. He realizes that microscopic, relentless physical actions, applied consistently over decades, will eventually break through a solid concrete barrier. The timeline accelerates when a young inmate named Tommy discovers information that could legally prove Andy's innocence. To protect his money laundering operation, the warden has Tommy murdered. This severs Andy's final tie to the legal system, forcing him to execute his endgame. He breaks through his wall, climbs into the prison's plumbing, and crawls through 500 yards of raw human waste. He pushes through half a mile of toxic darkness to emerge clean on the other side of the outer fence. The next morning, Andy weaponizes the phantom identity he spent years building. Wearing a pristine suit and carrying the warden's ledgers, he walks into a Portland bank and signs the paperwork as Randall Stevens. He legally drains $370,000 of the warden's illicit cash. On his way out of town, he drops the ledgers in the mail, sending the evidence of the corruption directly to the press. Faced with imminent arrest, the warden takes his own life. Andy perfectly inverts the hierarchy of Shawshank. He uses the warden's own greed and the exact system designed to oppress him to fund his freedom and deliver absolute justice. The emotional weight of this victory falls to Red. After 40 years inside, Red is finally paroled. He works at the same grocery store Brooks did, staying in the exact same halfway house. Terrified of the outside world, Red actively considers breaking his parole just so they will send him back to a place that makes sense. He is saved from the edge of despair by a promise he made to Andy years earlier. Red travels to a long rock wall in a Buxton hayfield. Under a piece of black volcanic glass, he digs up an envelope containing cash and a letter. The letter is an invitation. Andy has fled to Zihuatanejo, a small town on the Pacific Ocean, a warm place with no memory. He asks his old friend to join him, offering a new life repairing boats on the beach. It all comes down to a single choice: get busy living or get busy dying. A corrupt system can cage a physical body, and walls can steal a man's time, but a mind that refuses to surrender hope remains eternally free.